we doing today? This is part 3 of a 6-part series where we are going over Chad Daybell's blog posts from fall of 2015. If you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, they are listed down below. Heads up, I'm wearing the same shirt and with the same quarantine hair because I'm recording multiple videos in one day. Now before we get started, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. It is great to meet you. I definitely invite you to hit that subscribe button and follow this Lori Vallow Chad Daybell saga along with us. I am very proud of the community that's being built here, and I would love for you to be part of it. So let's go right ahead and jump into parts 7, 8, and 9 of Chad Daybell's blog. Chad's 7th post is called Elder Drago and a Special Visitor. My freshman year at BYU can be summed up in one word: boring. I had received a full tuition scholarship and I was worried about getting bad grades and losing the scholarship. So each day I drove to school from Springville, went to my classes, studied in the library, and then went back home. I did hang out with some high school friends during my first semester, but once they started going on missions, my social life was basically non-existent. I dated a girl a couple of times who was in my Communications 101 class, but we really didn't click. She was from Florida, and on our final date she said, "Sorry, but you need to get out and see the world. There's more to life than Utah Valley." I was slightly offended. I'd been to Disneyland 3 times with my family, and one time I had walked about a mile into Tijuana, Mexico. Then there was a trip to the Four Corners Monument where I'd stood in 4 different states at the same time. What did she mean I hadn't seen the world? I was about to find out. I was called to serve as a Spanish-speaking missionary in the New Jersey Morristown Mission. I entered the Missionary Training Center on July 15th, 1987, and I loved it there. With my partially torn veil, I was on a spiritual high in the MTC. It was like having loads of spiritual light dumped on me throughout the day. MTC President George Durant's powerful talks always filled me with great enthusiasm. I felt closer to the Savior there than I had ever had. One time during our classroom study, our teacher shared with us a poem about the Savior leaving his heavenly home to suffer the indignities of earth life for our sakes. As the teacher read it, I could visualize the scenes of what was happening in the poem, and I started sobbing in gratitude. I couldn't stop. The teacher just stared at me as if to say, "Get a grip, man, it's just a poem." Finally, the teacher told the rest of my district to take a break, and he left me alone in the room as I got my emotions under control. I was embarrassed, but I was also exuberant because the Spirit had testified so strongly to me of the Savior and his mission. During the first few months of my mission, I kept my hair fairly long compared to other missionaries. Then I got transferred to Union City, where a member lived who owned a beauty salon. She always cut the missionary's hair for free, and on our next P-Day we went to the salon. I got in the chair, and without any hesitation she took a razor and went right up the back of my head. I saw a substantial chunk of hair fall to the ground beside me. Before I knew it, I had a flat top, and the sides of my head were shaved to the skin. "This should last you a few weeks," she said, clearly proud of her work. I mumbled my thanks, then waited on my companion, who was getting his hair cut by an assistant in another corner. When he finally saw me, he said, "Whoa, the president might not like that." I shrugged and said, "Well, there's nothing I can do about it now." That afternoon, as we walked down the bustling streets of Little Cuba in Union City, all of the kids pointed at me, shouted the same phrase, then ran away. Finally, we asked a grinning teenage boy on the porch what they were saying. "They're saying Drago," he said. "They think you're Ivan Drago, you know, the Russian guy who fought Rocky." By 1987, Rocky IV had made its way to Spanish TV, and these Hispanic kids were thinking Drago himself was walking the streets of New Jersey looking for a rematch. It was kind of a stretch, but these kids had only ever seen 2 pasty tall white guys with flat tops, Drago and me. I dealt with that nickname for much of my mission. Even though I didn't learn the Spanish language very quickly, I immediately felt accepted and loved by the Hispanic members. I came to realize something I'd never known. Many of these members regularly received dreams and visions. I had been hiding my new visionary gift and hadn't really told anyone about my Flaming Gorge experience, but these people talked about their visions openly. During a Sunday dinner appointment with a Peruvian family, I sat down next to the husband, Raphael. He had shared in testimony meeting that day a vision where his great-grandpa had appeared to him while he was investigating the church in Peru. The grandpa had told Raphael to get baptized and move to America. "So here I am," he said. My companion was talking with other family members, so I said to Raphael, I have visions too, but I don't dare tell anyone. Back in Utah, they think I'm crazy. Raphael looked at me in shock. The Mormons in Utah don't talk about these things? I shook my head and Raphael responded, "That's a key reason I knew the church is true. The first vision, the angel Moroni, John the Baptist appearing, Peter, James, and John giving the priesthood, and the angels at Kirtland Temple, it's the whole foundation of the church. Oh, they'll mention them as historical events, but it's as if the members there don't believe they still happen now." Raphael got kind of fired up. The veil was very thin for Joseph Smith, and it still is for me and my family. We talk about it all the time, and our ancestors help guide us. That conversation was a turning point for me. I began to consciously develop my gift and could recognize good and bad spirits as we knocked on doors. My tracting area consisted of thousands of apartment buildings along the Hudson River, and I can testify that most of them are haunted. Maybe haunted is too strong of a word. Better said, the buildings are inhabited by disembodied spirits who died and don't really know where to go next, so they hang around places they lived in mortality. Sometimes families would complain about supernatural disturbances, and we would use the priesthood to cast out these disruptive spirits. But often during a missionary lesson, I would sense both angels and disembodied spirits in the room, and I thought, hey, if these spirits want to listen in, what can it hurt? I sometimes saw the angels talking to them afterward. I feel there were some lessons that were more effective for those spirits than for the mortals we were teaching. Then came a cherished moment in March 1988 that helped fortify me. I'm going to quote directly from my mission journal. As we walked home tonight, I had an experience that I will always treasure. As we were walking home, my companion was on my left next to the road. And for about 30 seconds as I walked along, it was as if time stopped for me because I could sense the spirit of my deceased grandpa, Keith Daybell, walking along with us on my right side. I didn't actually see him with my natural eyes, but he was tangibly there and actually rubbed shoulders with me a time or two. He was killed in a logging accident in 1951 at a young age, so I've never met him in this life, but I knew instantly who he was, and I could almost sense his happiness and my recognition of him. No actual words passed between us, but I was given the knowledge of how proud he was of my efforts, and that he'd be there for me from time to time during my mission. He then departed, and I came back to my senses. Grandpa Keith is the same person I would see in the light a few years later when I had my near-death experience in La Hala Cove. He was still watching over me then, and even to this day, he is with me at crucial moments in my life. In my next entry, I will share how I came to know Hector Sosa, the author of A Change is Coming. I don't know about you, but I find it very difficult to believe that any person on this planet would look at Chad Daybell and associate him with the character out of Rocky. That being said, that is what it is. I don't have anything nice to say, so I will say nothing at all. He also does talk about an experience with his grandpa. And like he said, this is the grandpa he claims to have seen in his 1993 near-death experience. So now, 1987, his grandpa's walking along with him. This is just 2 years after his original near-death experience where he claims that his veil was torn. So as he goes on this mission to New Jersey, he is claiming that very quickly he can sense and communicate with spirits from the other side. And if we fast forward to current times, we think about people like Lori Vallow and her niece Melanie, it appears that people get gifts rather quickly. Now, is this because Chad was able to get his gifts so quickly back in the 80s? Possibly. That he's gone ahead and taken that, his own personal experience, and put it off on other people to make them believe they have the same gifts. In my opinion, that kind of makes sense. Drop a comment down below and let me know what you guys think. Blog post number 8 is titled Halos and Hector Sosa. In January 1988, I was called to train a new missionary. His name was Elder Hepworth, and we really clicked. He was from southern Utah, and he was tough as nails. He had been roping wild horses in the Utah desert just a few weeks earlier. He just wanted to work hard, and we did. Not that it was always easy, but the Lord always compensated for the hard times, it seems. One day we knocked on a door, and a lady answered. She seemed really polite, but as we explained about the Book of Mormon, she changed into a frightening maniac right before our eyes. She screamed, "You are the devil. You've added to the Bible. I'm a born-again Christian and I condemn you." She continued shouting for another minute before I finally said, "Okay, thanks. I guess you don't want to hear our message. Please take this free Book of Mormon and just read through it." This sent her into another profanity-laced tirade, and she wouldn't touch the book. We just shrugged our shoulders and walked away. Outside the apartment building was a small park, and we sat down on the bench. I felt like crying, and an equally frustrated Elder Hepworth sat there and muttered, "I must be changing," because the old me would have punched her lights out. As I cracked up, he said, "I'm serious. I wanted to kill her." I agreed, and suddenly we were both laughing. An hour later, we were walking down Broadway Avenue in Union City. As we started to cross 48th Street, it felt like I had hit into a brick wall. Some sort of power was not going to let me take another step. I felt prompted to track in an old brown building off to the right. I tried to shake it off, but prompting came again. Elder Hepworth looked at me, and I tried to go forward again, but I couldn't. So I said, "Why don't we track here?" As we climbed to the top floor, a young girl named Esther came down the stairs. When she saw us, she stopped and said, "Hello, elders. Do you want to come visit us?" We said yes, and she led us back to her apartment. We'd never seen this girl before, but she seemed to know all about the church. She poured us some orange juice and gave us some cookies. After a minute, I said, "Are you a member of the church?" She gave me a surprised look and said, "Of course. Didn't you know that?" She then explained she was living with her uncle, aunt, and cousins, who were also members of the church. I'd asked if they'd been to the church recently, and she said, a couple of years ago. We found out a daughter of the family lived with her husband and son on the floor below. They were Jorge and Yesenia Vasquez and their son Isaac. We arranged to teach them. Yesenia was eager to get active in the church again, and after we taught Jorge the first discussion, he seemed pretty happy. He had read the Book of Mormon, and he said, "I think it is true." He had had some interesting dreams about his family's future. In one dream, Jorge is fighting off Satan's efforts to get his family. Then a light comes and Satan departs. In another dream, Jorge was shown Yesenia's family on a battlefield, engaging in a battle of life and death. At first they are winning, but then they start to lose. Then Jorge comes onto the scene and they win the battle. When Jorge asked me what I thought they meant, I said it meant that Jorge would join the church and lead Yesenia's family back to full activity in the church. A few days later, we met again, and the spirit was nearly overpowering. Toward the end of the visit, Jorge stopped the discussion and said, "I wasn't going to say anything, but I just need to tell you that there are halos around you. You are both surrounded by a halo." We couldn't see the halo, but it was a special confirmation to us and to him that what we are teaching is true. Jorge was soon baptized. He later served as the bishop of the Union City First Ward and helped activate Yesenia's family. He and Yesenia now live in Florida and continue to make a huge spiritual impact on their family and friends. I know it was the Lord's hand or invisible wall that led us to meet Esther that day. Jorge is of Puerto Rican descent, and I share his story today because he reminds me so much of another wonderful Puerto Rican man that I have become close friends with, Hector Sosa Jr. I visited a website in early 2015 where Hector had shared a few dreams he had experienced throughout his life. More recently, he had been having dreams about his family's future. I read them with interest, and it reminded me of the dreams Jorge had shared with Elder Hepworth and me 30 years earlier. Then one Friday night in January, I was talking with my family at home in Springville when the Spirit said, "Go knock on Hector Sosa's door right now. He needs to write a book." I really hate receiving those kind of messages. I know how writing a book can change a person's life completely, for good and bad. I had never met Hector or even sent him an email message, but I went to the computer and found his address. I was happy to see he also lived in Springville. At least the Spirit knew it would be a short trip. I was expecting him to live in Provo or even further. I grabbed my jacket and told my wife Tammy, I need to go tell someone they need to write a book. She is fortunately accustomed to this kind of thing. She said, "Okay, I'll see you when you get back." It was dark by the time I got to Hector's home. I rang the doorbell and Hector opened the door a bit tentatively. I said, "Hi, I'm Chad Daybell. I published Julie Rose's book. You've heard of her, right?" Hector nodded. "Yeah, I've read her books." "Can I come in for a minute?" I asked. Hector graciously allowed me in, and I explained I had read some of his dreams on a website. He shared more details about them, and we really felt like old friends right from the start. I met his wife, who is also named Tammy, and I thought it was a good sign. After an hour and a half, I finally broached the subject of writing a book. Hector looked shocked. "Me?" he asked. "Wow, I don't know." I figured that answer was better than no. So I explained how I would help assemble it. He soon agreed to it, and I made sure Tammy was on board as well. They are a great couple, and she has been a huge support every step of the way. Over the next couple of weeks, Hector wrote a very good first draft. Then we started meeting every Thursday evening, and he would give me more material for the manuscript. During these meetings, I would ask additional questions that helped him remember certain dreams and visions. These visits brought forth some of the most powerful parts of his book, A Change is Coming. The final chapter in the book is about upcoming national unrest and economic trouble, and it was literally a last-second addition. I had taken the typeset manuscript to Hector's house for a final check. When I arrived, he explained he'd had another vision that absolutely needed to be included. He emailed me the chapter, and when I received it and put it in the typeset version, I stopped at the last paragraph. It was chilling, and I wondered whether I should delete the last sentence. At that very moment, Hector sent me an email saying that Spirit told him that the final paragraph needed to be exact, word for word. I said to myself, fine with me. I left it as it now stands in the book. I thank the Lord for Jorge and Yesenia Vasquez and for Hector and Tammy Sosa. They are valiant, righteous couples who are helping to save souls. In my next post, I will share some true miracles I witnessed on my mission, including a priesthood blessing that helped guide me to my sweet wife, Tammy. Now, the website he keeps referring to is the Vallow website, which is another voice of warning. Just an FYI, their website shows up as sources for my channel on YouTube. So, hello to everybody from Vallow. I'm so glad you joined us. I really appreciate your support on this channel. The 9th post in his blog is called Miracles Still Happen. When I was with Elder Hepworth in Union City, we witnessed actual miracles. One happened with the Jimenez family. They lived in one of the scariest apartment buildings I had ever seen. Graffiti was scrawled across the hallways, and the building was trashed. We were worried about going in there, but we felt compelled to. On the top floor, we met a man named Carlos and his teenage daughter, Lena. She told us to come back when her mother, Anna, was home. We returned the next day, and Anna kind of freaked out when she saw us in the doorway. She told us that the week before she had had a vivid dream of two young men in white shirts and ties entering her family's life and helping them find eternal truth. She invited us in, and we had a very good discussion. Lena actually progressed faster than Anna, and she was baptized. Lena had a major medical issue, though. Her left wrist and arm had nerve damage, and the muscles had been deteriorating for a few months. Her arm either hung limply at her side or she cradled it in her right hand. Their doctor was very skeptical about ever fixing the problem, but he was willing to try surgery. Anna's holdup on getting baptized had been rough because she felt she needed to save money for Lena's upcoming surgery. I soon received word that I was being transferred to Newark, but I was allowed to pay the Jimenez family one last visit. When we arrived, both Elder Hepworth and I felt we should give Lena a priesthood blessing. I felt he should give it. As Elder Hepworth gave the blessing, I could tell something special was happening. We had true spiritual power resting upon us. Lena started crying before the blessing ended. She could feel a tingling sensation happening in her hand. Then suddenly she was healed and she could move it normally. Elder Hepworth and I looked at each other in shock. Anna had Lena raise her arm and lower it without any pain. Anna was baptized the following week and has been a stalwart member ever since. A few months later, I was serving as a zone leader in Patterson, New Jersey with Elder Cobb. My previous companion and I had felt guided to a certain part of the city where there weren't a lot of Spanish-speaking people. On this night, I drove back into that same neighborhood. As we crossed an intersection, I heard a male voice shout, "Stop the car." I quickly slammed on the brakes and pulled to the side of the road. I turned to Elder Cobb and said, "What's so important?" He looked at me like I was nuts. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Why did you shout to stop the car?" I asked. "I didn't say anything," he said, looking puzzled. "You really didn't hear that?" I asked. But he shook his head. I tried to explain, but I finally said, "We must need to find somebody around here." We parked the car and started walking, and I spotted a guy on a ladder painting the second story of a house. I shouted up to him, "Do you know where any Spanish-speaking people live on this block?" He pointed across the street and said, "Try that house over there." We went to the house he pointed to, and a cheerful-looking man opened the door as we approached. He was just leaving, but we gave him a Book of Mormon, and he said he would be interested in having us come back. Our conversation with him lasted about a minute. I turned around to thank the guy on the ladder, but there was no sign of him. I couldn't believe it. He could hardly have climbed down to the ground in the time we had our backs to him, much less cart away, paint can, and the ladder. The combination of the shouting voice and the disappearing ladder guy, all within 5 minutes, hinted that there might be something special about this family. The family joined the church within a month. We soon met the husband's sisters, Jenny and Karina, who were soon baptized as well. They have been ambassadors of the gospel throughout their lives. At the end of my mission, a few months later, Jenny asked if I could give her a priesthood blessing. I did, and when I concluded, she turned around and told me that during the blessing, she had received a vision of a young blonde girl with short hair who was praying at the side of her bed. The girl was asking Heavenly Father to guide her and help her find the right person to spend her life with. Jenny felt this was the girl I would marry. I knew Jenny was very receptive to spiritual things, and I took her seriously. I didn't know any girls with short blonde hair, though. A week later, I was home in Springville, Utah. I saw my brother's 1988 high school yearbook on his shelf, so I grabbed it and flipped through it. There was a half-page feature about a girl named Tammy Douglas. When I saw her face, I felt the most electrifying shock of my life. Staring back at me was a beautiful girl with short blonde hair. I quickly turned to her senior class photo and I was fascinated. I realized she would have been a sophomore when I was a senior, but I couldn't remember her. She would have graduated more than a year earlier and had probably gone off to college somewhere. What were the odds I would find her? I'll end the suspense now. I found her. In the next post, I'll share how the Lord brought us together. Now, I'm not saying that that young woman did not regain the ability to use her arm, and quite frankly, I hope that that is true. Him telling this story of him saying a prayer over people and suddenly she was able to fully use her arm is very reminiscent of Jim Jones. And this went down in 1987. So very quickly, he has decided he has a full range of power over people. That is terrifying. Also in this post, he speaks very highly of Tammy. And as we progress through more of his blog posts, he absolutely speaks of her as if though she is an angel among us. By all accounts that we know about her, she absolutely was. It makes my blood boil to know that at one time he thought the world of her, but yet in October of 2019, he could so easily discard her and move on to this life of craziness that he now finds himself in. In Chad's next 3 blog posts, he talks in length about Tammy, about his relationship with a football player, as well as visions that he had about his growing family and about his children. You guys can expect episodes 4, 5, and 6 of this series to be coming very soon. And just a heads up, I will have different quarantine hair in those videos and a different quarantine shirt. I recorded episodes 1, 2, and 3 of this series all in the same day. Trust me, I've changed my clothes. I've taken care of myself. I'm just getting as much done as I possibly can in one sitting. I hope wherever this video finds you, you're having the best day ever. I hope that you are safe and healthy and that your family is safe and healthy. Sending good vibes to everybody. We all need support right now. I thank you so much for spending your time with me. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of Chad's blog post. I will catch you guys very soon, and we will go over some more of Chad's blog posts. They're very interesting, and they give us a lot of insight as to what's going on these days. So I will see you when I see you. Bye, guys.